The ungrateful brat who abandoned the family is just a stranger.
It felt like I'd been struck hard on the back of my head. Abandoned the family? Who? Me? I'm the one who sent them money every month and even bought their house in my name. And I'm the ungrateful one? My body began trembling, maybe out of anger. Even clenching my fists didn't stop the shaking. The one who firmly grabbed my shoulder was my husband, Matt.
This is unforgivable. I'll make her pay.
Having someone angrier than me helped me calm down, oddly enough. Matt, I'm fine. Don't do anything rash. I held back tears that were welling up from the surge of emotions. Looking away from my mom, Grace, I turned my eyes to my dad, George, whose gray hair caught my attention. When my dad met my gaze, he quickly looked away and coldly said,
"Leave the money for the celebration and get lost."
My body moved on its own, and I found myself throwing the envelope with the congratulatory money at my dad. This is your severance pay. Don't expect to ever see me again. With that, I cut off all the financial support I'd been sending them. Then, after talking it over with Matt, I decided to take a bold step. I'm Hannah Anderson, 32 years old. 7 years ago, I left my childhood home, and 5 years ago, I married Matt. By the 5th year of marriage, most couples might already have kids. But we don't have any. Matt wants children, but I don't think we ever will. Why? Because I have no confidence I could ever be a good mother. Having never received love from my own parents, I can't imagine being able to give that love to my child. A child born to me would undoubtedly be unhappy. My dad was quiet and inscrutable, while my mom was capricious. That's the impression I have of my parents. My mom had me when she was 27.
Marriage is a graveyard for life, don't you think? That's why I never intended to get married.
She said this, almost indulging in her own thoughts, as she spoke to me when I was still in elementary school. I wish she could have considered how hearing that made me feel. Every time she told me this story, it made my heart race with unease, even as a child. Because my mom would always end her story with the same line.
But you came along, so I had no choice but to marry George. Well, at least he made good money and let me do whatever I wanted.
She would add, I have no regrets about getting married. But to me, it didn't feel like much of a consolation. I could almost hear her voice saying, if it weren't for you, I'd still be free. The only thing that kept me going was my little sister, Megan. Megan is 5 years younger than me. The fact that Megan was born was proof that my parents were getting along, or so I tried to believe. My dad, who was rarely home and hardly spoke when he was, and my mom, who was carefree and neglectful of the family. It didn't make sense that they'd be doing well, but as a child, I desperately needed to believe in the concept of family, so I invented reasons to hold on to it. By the time I reached middle school, my mom was spending more and more time away from home. Taking care of little Megan naturally fell to me.
Hannah, where's Mom? Did she go out by herself again?
It hurt to be asked so innocently.
Mom and Dad are working. They're doing it for us. So even though it's lonely, let's do our best, okay? Okay, I get it.
Even though I knew she didn't fully understand, Megan would accept it without complaint, which broke my heart every time. But there was no other way. I couldn't bring myself to say, Mom is out with another man. even if my life depended on it. At least we never struggled financially, which I saw as a small blessing. That was thanks to Dad's good salary. There was always money left at home for our meals.
I wish we could have Mom's cooking instead of money.
When it all became too much, I'd whisper those words to myself in the bathroom, crying where Megan couldn't hear me. My mom was actually a good cook, and on the rare occasions when she was in a good mood, she'd make us meals. Each time I experienced those rare moments, I couldn't help but get my hopes up, which made me feel pathetic. As I grew older, I understood more, which was painful, but I also became more capable. At first, dinner was just store-bought meals, but eventually, I started cooking for us myself.
Hannah, this is so good. You're a genius. Really? I'm glad to hear that. I wasn't sure how it'd turn out.
Megan's presence gradually became my real emotional support. By the time I was working and Megan was in middle school, we even started talking openly about our parents' rocky relationship.
Why don't Mom and Dad just get divorced?
I don't know. Mom seems to be attracted to Dad's money, but I can't see what's in it for Dad.
If they did divorce, whose side would you pick?
I'm not sure. Dad, who supported us financially without much warmth. Or Mom, who occasionally, when in an exceptionally good mood, whimsically acted like a mother. I don't know. What about you, Megan?
I don't like either of them. I'd go with you, Hannah.
That's not fair, Megan. You asked me first. Even after I became an adult, I couldn't bring myself to leave home because of Megan. I couldn't imagine leaving her alone. When would be the right time to move out? If I could save enough money for the two of us to live on, I'd suggest it to Megan. When I had finally saved up enough money through careful planning and patience, a turning point arrived. I'm thinking of studying abroad. What? Don't worry about the money. Dad said he'd cover it. I don't know when I'll be back. Megan was carving her own path and setting off on her journey. It should have been something to celebrate, but I couldn't find the words. Ugly feelings started surfacing inside me. I had stayed in this house for Megan's sake, but now she was the one leaving so easily. It felt like a black cloud of resentment was spreading in my chest. To my surprise, my mom was thrilled to hear about Megan's decision to study abroad.
I always knew you were different from everyone else. These days, you have to think globally. Work hard and make it big. I'm counting on you.
Her excitement only fueled my jealousy. No matter how hard I tried, my mom had never expected anything from me.
Megan must be in England by now. I wonder what she's up to. Lucky her.
Who knows? Knowing her, she's probably studying hard.
That's true. Oh, I'm so excited for her future.
Living in the house without Megan felt unbearable. Soon after, I decided to leave too. Mom's reaction to my departure was the complete opposite of her reaction to Megan's. It was probably because I had taken care of all the household chores.
What about the laundry, the dirty dishes? Who's going to take care of the trash?
Your purpose here is to do housework. That message hit me hard, and for the first time, I decided I was done with my mom. You handled those things yourself before I started doing them, didn't you? Take care of your own stuff. I had always been the obedient, understanding, complaint-free eldest daughter. Mom never expected me to rebel, not in her wildest dreams. Her face turned bright red with anger.
You think you're something special just because Megan is? She's the remarkable one, not you. There's no way someone like you can make it on your own.
You'll never know unless you try. Dad neither objected nor approved. Without even looking at me, he muttered under his breath.
Do whatever you want, Hannah. If you need money, I'll give it to you.
His words were curt, but they gave me a small sense of relief. I figured he must have said the same thing to Megan. To my dad, Megan and I were equally insignificant. No better, no worse. Just his daughters, nothing more. Thanks, Dad. He didn't reply. I left the house right after that. Living alone for the first time was refreshing and surprisingly enjoyable. Freedom. I still had to go to work, but as long as I did, everything else was up to me. No one could criticize me. I could eat whenever I wanted, choose my own meals, and go to bed on my own schedule. I wondered if this was the kind of freedom my mom had craved. I found myself reflecting on that occasionally. 2 years after moving out at 27, I was living with someone I wanted to marry. That person was Matt, who would later become my husband. Matt had been a classmate in high school, and we had run into each other by chance at work the year after I moved out. He had joined the company as a mid-career hire and was the one who spoke to me.
Hannah, you seem so different now.
Do I? I was really busy back then.
Yeah, things were always so tense. You smiled, but your aura was intense.
What's that supposed to mean? Matt was a calm and ethical person, but most importantly, he always paid attention to me. Naturally, I found myself drawn to him, and to my delight, he seemed to feel the same way. Matt confessed his feelings, and we started dating. A year later, he proposed. While I was happy, I couldn't shake the negative impression of marriage I had from watching my parents. When I shared my feelings with Matt, he didn't give up.
I get why you're hesitant about marriage, Hannah. But if we think about our future, I don't think it's a bad idea. First, let me show you this.
No way. You're joking, right?
I thought it'd be unfair to rely on emotions, so I decided to make a logical case instead.
Matt was known for his presentation skills at work, but I never expected him to pitch our marriage like this. But this is really clear. You're definitely on the fast track.
And right now, you can marry this fast tracker. My income might skyrocket. Better claim me now while you can.
What's that supposed to mean? But, yeah, maybe that's not a bad idea. Being with Matt made me laugh more often than I ever had. If marriage meant sharing moments like this, it might actually bring happiness. And so, I decided to marry Matt. When I told my parents about the wedding as expected, they didn't show much interest. The only thing my mom seemed concerned about was the monthly allowance. Not the one I received, but the one I gave. According to her, my dad's income had been steadily declining, and the amount of money he gave her had decreased proportionately.
At this rate, I'm going to starve. I can't live like this. If you're really my daughter, won't you help your mom?
She said this with such despair that I reluctantly started sending her a substantial amount of money every month. It felt unfair that she only relied on me during times like this. Even so, I couldn't bring myself to reject my mom, After disappointing her so much when I left home, I felt obligated not to treat her any worse. It was my way of repaying her. That was thanks to Dad's good salary. However, when I informed him about my marriage, Dad made a suggestion that confirmed it. He asked if we'd consider buying the house they were living in. He must have been in a really desperate situation. Mom was probably telling the truth. I felt I had to help. Luckily, the company I worked for had a great work-life balance. I earned a good salary with plenty of savings. The amount my dad proposed was more affordable than I had expected, and compared to what he had spent on me over the years, it wasn't a significant sum. After discussing it with Matt, I decided to accept Dad's proposal.
Please don't tell Grace. I mean your mom.
Okay, I'll change the name on the title, but you can keep living here. My dad looked smaller than I had ever seen him before. I also decided to continue the monthly allowance. I got some reassurance from Matt too. He mentioned that I shouldn't feel pressured to stop and could keep going as long as I thought it was needed. He probably knew that if anything happened to my parents after I stopped, I would feel guilty.
Good thing you married a high-earning husband.
Matt joked, making me adore him even more. When I told Megan about my marriage, she was overjoyed. She was still abroad, so we couldn't meet right away, but she promised to let me know when she returned and celebrate to her heart's content. It felt like the awkwardness from our last meeting had finally vanished. Married life was nothing short of happiness. I didn't return to my parents' home and instead focused on my life with Matt. But occasionally, Matt would bring it up.
Should we visit your parents sometime? I'll go with you.
No, it's fine. There's no real reason to go back.
Are you sure? Isn't George turning 60 next month? Aren't you going to celebrate his birthday?
His 60th. I hadn't thought about it until Matt mentioned it. He didn't seem like the kind of person who would enjoy his celebration. But if I didn't take this opportunity, who knows when I'd visit again? Maybe I'll go. It would be the first time in 5 years, ever since I last saw them before getting married. I made up my mind and decided to visit my parents' house. Since I couldn't get in touch with my mom, I only let my dad know when I'd be coming. Even though I insisted I'd be fine on my own, Matt came along out of concern. I'm so nervous.
Relax. You've got this.
After about an hour of driving, we arrived at my parents' house. The exterior hadn't changed much at all. Just as I was about to press the doorbell, I heard laughter from inside. It seemed the living room window near the entrance was open. The familiar voice I heard was Mom's, bringing back a wave of nostalgia. Against my better judgment, I walked around to the garden to get a closer look. The voices became even clearer. Then I recognized the second voice. It was Megan's. There was no mistaking it. Megan had come back home. She said she'd let me know when she returned. Why didn't she? As I stood there in confusion, I overheard their conversation.
Megan, you surprised me by coming home all of a sudden.
Well, you scared me with that awful lie about Dad being unwell. I rushed back only to find out it was a surprise birthday celebration for his 60th. Seriously.
Relieved to learn it was an unexpected return, I felt my tension ease. That's right. Megan wasn't the type to lie.
But it's so nice to have the whole family together again.
And Hannah's coming today too, right? I'm excited. The whole family will be together.
Hearing Megan's words, I was stunned by Mom's response.
Megan, you're too kind. Who cares about Hannah? She's not family or anything.
What?
The ungrateful brat who abandoned the family is just a stranger.
It felt like I'd been hit hard on the back of my head. Abandon the family? Who? Me? I'm the one who sent them money every month and even bought their house in my name. And I'm the ungrateful one? I could hear Megan yelling at Mom, but I couldn't process her words. My body trembled, whether from anger or something else, I couldn't tell. Even as I clenched my fists, they kept shaking uncontrollably. Matt was the one who firmly grabbed my shoulder to steady me.
This is unforgivable. I'll make her pay.
It's true what they say. Seeing someone angrier than you can help you stay calm. Though still shaken by my mom's words, I shook my head and held onto Matt's arm. Matt, I'm okay, really. Calm down.
She doesn't understand how kind you are, Hannah. I can't forgive her. If you don't say something, I will.
Matt. His voice was probably louder than he realized, carried by the anger he felt. Noticing our voices, my dad poked his head out of the living room window.
Oh, Hannah, you're here already?
Well, yeah.
Hannah, you're here?
Mom appeared beside Dad and smirked as she looked at me.
Can't figure out how to use the front door? Hurry up and come in. Or are you planning some surprise? Don't try to do something beyond your capabilities. You'll just embarrass yourself.
Hey, Mom. Knock it off already.
As Mom's voice echoed, I felt my face grow hot. It was always like this when I talked to her. She belittled and mocked me, leaving me feeling miserable. And yet, why couldn't I let her go? It should have been easier to cut her off entirely. I'd tried many times, but at the very last moment, I always hesitated. The rare, fleeting moments of kindness from Mom in my memories would surface. But deep down, I knew the truth. That kind and caring Mom had never really existed. Hey, Mom. I overheard something earlier. Cautiously, I asked Mom. She tilted her head.
Overheard what?
You said, something about me not being part of the family.
Oh, that.
She nodded nonchalantly.
Well, it's true, isn't it? You knew I needed help, but you still went ahead and left even though I told you not to. I was shocked, honestly. It felt like you repaid all I did for you with betrayal. If I'd known it would turn out this way, I wouldn't have bothered having you.
Something inside me snapped. How could she say something like that? Growing up, I was the one who took care of Megan and did the household chores because my parents wouldn't. I rarely got to hang out with friends. Even now, I've been sending them money every month for years. I even bought this house, even though I didn't need to. After everything I've done, it's still not enough. As I shook with anger, staring at the floor, Mom spoke in her usual carefree tone.
Anyway, you came here to celebrate George, didn't you? Where's the gift? It's cash, right? Hurry up and hand it over.
She stretched out her hands expectantly, looking no different from a beggar. Megan grabbed Mom in frustration, yelling at her. Was she angry on my behalf? I held back tears that threatened to spill as emotions overwhelmed me. Turning my gaze away from Mom, I locked eyes with Dad. When our eyes met, he quickly looked away and coldly said,
Leave the money for the celebration and get lost.
My body moved on its own, and I threw the envelope with the celebratory money at Dad. This is your severance pay. I never want to see you again. Tears began streaming down my face uncontrollably. This time, I shouted at Mom. Ungrateful? Of course I am. Because I've never once felt gratitude towards you. I was a fool for trying to repay a debt I never owed. From now on, we're done. Consider me a stranger who abandoned this house.
Hannah, wait. Hold on, Hannah.
No way. Let's go, Matt.
Yeah, let's get out of here, Hannah.
Matt grabbed my hand, and we hurried to the car. My mom called my name desperately, but I didn't care. It was the first time I'd ever seen her look flustered. She was probably panicking because she immediately thought about losing the money I'd been sending her. In the end, I was just an ATM to her.
But now the deal's off, right?
Yeah. This time, I can't forgive her. Saying she regretted having me wasn't something a mother should ever say. She probably stopped being a mother a long time ago. Feeling liberated, I stopped sending money entirely. After discussing with Matt, I decided to take action. A few days later, Mom called me in a frenzy. Seeing her name on my phone screen, I could already imagine the scene. When I answered, her predictable voice shouted exactly what I expected.
Hannah, what the hell is this?
What do you mean? Pretending not to know, I answered with a question, which only made Mom's voice rise in frustration.
Don't play dumb. I know this is your doing. The house is being demolished. They said it was your order. What the hell are you thinking? Hey, stop the work, you idiots.
On the other end of the line, she was yelling at someone else. I could hear her desperate attempts to stop the workers, their arguments overlapping, and in the background, the sound of machines and the house crumbling. I could picture her frantically trying to interfere with the demolition. It was impossible for it to just stop. Yes, I sold the house I purchased from Dad, the one I grew up in. When I bought it, I actually acquired both the house and the land. And the buyer I sold it to required that it be cleared. It was the perfect arrangement. Megan had helped by taking our parents on a trip for my plan. I scheduled the demolition for that very day. And now, upon returning, Mom must have discovered the state of the house and confronted Dad, which led to her call to me. Apparently, she'd had quite a standoff with the demolition workers. But since Mom had no legal claim to either the house or the land, she couldn't win. After a few minutes of arguing with the workers, she returned to the phone. Whether she had been harshly reprimanded or was just frustrated that things weren't going her way, her mood was at an all-time low. She was in the worst possible state, her shrill voice on the verge of a full-blown tantrum.
Oh, come on. Why won't they stop? Hannah, you need to do something about this. Over half the house is already gone. Where am I supposed to live now? Are you listening, Hannah? You useless brat.
Why should I?
Well, because this is the house our family lived in. It's full of memories and everything, you know. How can you stand by and let them destroy it? It's unforgivable.
Memories? The response was so cliched and unexpected that I burst out laughing.
Hey, what's so funny?
It's just, what you're saying is ridiculous. Why would I want to keep bad memories around? I had no recollection of any warm family moments in that house. Watching it come down didn't even make me feel sad. It just made me want to stretch and yawn. All I could remember was myself working endlessly, Megan smiling innocently, but always looking lonely. And Dad, who simply turned a blind eye and ignored us. And Mom pushing everything onto me as if it weren't her problem. There was nothing worth reminiscing about. They were things I only wanted erased from my memory.
Sure, it wasn't always easy, but we're family, right? This was the home where we all lived together. A special place. Besides, families should help each other, don't you think? Megan was being just as rude the other day, though.
Another laughable statement. Help each other. Do you even know what that means?
Of course I do. That's why I'm saying we should help each other from now on.
And when exactly have you ever helped me?
What?
If I had to name one thing, it'd be that she gave birth to me. Maybe she even took care of me as a baby. But I've long since repaid her for that. If anything, I've given far too much. Tell me, when have you ever helped me? I can't think of a single example. Please enlighten me. Mom mumbled something, clearly at a loss for words. Of course, she couldn't answer. She must be aware of it herself. There's hardly ever been a time when she's helped me.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but there must be plenty. I'm the one who gave birth to you and raised you after all.
The audacity to call herself a mother after all the neglect. Sure, thanks for giving birth to me. Anyway, I'm busy.
Wait, we haven't resolved anything yet. Hannah, why would you do something so cruel? You're breaking my heart.
When yelling didn't work, she resorted to guilt tripping. How pathetic.
You used to be so kind and listen to everything I said. Is it because you got married? Please, bring back the old sweet Hannah. Why did you have to change?
I was never kind. I was just convenient. Now that I'd finally broken free from Mom's hold, why should I have to listen to this? I let out an exaggerated sigh before starting to speak. You should already know why. You said it yourself. Don't you remember what you called me? You said an ungrateful brat who abandoned the family is just a stranger. So I couldn't care less about what happens to a house I abandoned. I'm not such a good person that I'd worry about a stranger, and I have no reason to stop what's happening.
But then where am I supposed to go?
You've got plenty of places to go. Remember how you spent every other night out when we were kids? Why don't you look up those people from back then? Anyway, I'm busy. She tried to say more, but I hung up and turned off my phone. With the house gone, I thought I'd cut ties with my parents. Or so I believed. But there was something I didn't know. As flawed as their methods were, I was loved by someone awkward. I realized this only after the house was demolished. At that time, I was so desperate to sever ties with my parents that I impulsively decided to sell the house. But my emotions couldn't keep up, and I couldn't think clearly. As a result, I left most of the final arrangements to the real estate agent. The location of my childhood home wasn't bad, but it wasn't in a highly sought-after neighborhood either. I was prepared for it to take a while to sell, but it was snapped up surprisingly quickly. From that point, things moved fast. I wanted everything done before I had the chance to change my mind. Half in a daze, I let Matt support me and sign the contract as he guided me. Looking back, it was a reckless move, but I didn't care if I sold the house for free. I just wanted it gone. I thought demolishing it would finally free me. In my rush, I missed one crucial detail. I can't believe Dad was the one who bought it.
This time, Matt handled almost everything for you, but you should really read contracts more carefully. Otherwise, you'll get scammed someday.
Dad furrowed his brow in annoyance as he spoke. Matt had brought me to a nearby diner, where Dad was already waiting. Surprised to see him there, I turned to Matt, who quickly apologized.
I'm sorry for keeping this from you.
Wait, why is Mom here?
Well, I've actually been in contact with George.
Matt started explaining hesitantly, like someone caught in an affair. Apparently, when we visited to announce our marriage, Matt had secretly exchanged contact information with my dad. With Dad? Why? What about Mom?
It was just with George. There was something I wanted to discuss with him.
Dad had never cared about me. I was supposed to be irrelevant to him. So why would he have anything to talk about with Matt?
Don't look so worried. In his own way, George cared about you, Hannah.
What? I turned to my dad instinctively, but his expression was the same as always. Matt must have been lying to comfort me. How many years was I ignored? After all that, you're telling me he cared about me? I can't believe it. Sure, I'm grateful that he supported us financially, but... As I said this, I glanced at my dad and I couldn't help but be surprised by what I saw. It might have been the most shocking moment of my life. Tears were streaming down Dad's face, tracing lines along his cheeks. Confused, I couldn't take my eyes off him. Even as I stared, more tears kept falling. Dad sniffled, wiping his already runny nose, then leaned down so far that his forehead almost hit the table.
Hannah, I'm so sorry. I truly am.
What? I don't even know what's going on anymore. Using the paper and napkins Matt handed him, he blew his nose and began speaking, stumbling over his words. Like Mom, he had never intended to get married in the first place. Struggling with expressing emotions, Dad had faced many difficulties in his relationships.
My face has really stirred up a lot of confusion. Folks always assume I'm mad, and I can't even remember how many arguments that sparked.
It had been tough when he first started working, but over time, he learned how to adopt a work-friendly demeanor. That's when a coworker introduced him to my mom. Mom, with her expressive face and ever-changing emotions, fascinated Dad. He admired her for having what he lacked and was instantly drawn to her.
Grace. Even with someone like me, she'd talk and laugh all by herself. Being with her felt comfortable.
As Dad started thinking about marriage, he found out Mom was pregnant. Even though he knew she wasn't particularly interested in the idea, Dad proposed to her again and asked her to have their baby.
And then you, Hannah, were born. You were so cute, so precious. I just didn't know how to connect with you.
He worried that if he got too involved, I might end up like him and face similar hardships. So he wished I would take after Mom instead.
I knew Grace was carefree, but I thought as long as she came home, it would be okay.
You mean you condoned her cheating?
Condone. Maybe endured is a closer word. I didn't want you and Megan to lose your mother. That's why I worked so hard to ensure my income never dropped. I knew my worth lay in that.
As I stared at him in disbelief, Dad gave a sheepish smile.
But because I indulged Grace like that, she got carried away. And as a result, I ended up taking your mother away from you and Megan. On top of that, I even pushed Megan's care onto you.
If you knew that, why didn't you do anything about it?
Pathetic as it sounds, I really didn't know what to do. It was good that my income increased from working so hard, but that also meant I had more responsibilities. I was terrified of neglecting work and losing my income.
If what Dad was saying now was true, then as clumsy as he did care about us. But I just can't believe it. As I muttered this almost to myself, Matt took my hand.
You know why I exchanged contact information with George?
Well, because you're kind, Matt.
No, that's not it. When we visited to announce our marriage, George pleaded with me for something.
Pleaded you? Matt nodded with a wry smile.
Please take care of Hannah. She's a child who thinks too much about others and doesn't know how to express her own feelings. But she deserves to be happy.
Matt then revealed that my dad had handed him a bank card in my name. It contained around $30,000.
He told me it was for our wedding expenses. He'd calculated it to stay just under the taxable gift threshold.
But Dad said he didn't have any money. Could it be?
Until now, I've been handing my entire paycheck over to Grace to save this money. I lied.
As I listened further, I learned that Dad had been secretly saving money to repay the amounts I had sent as support over the years. My impression of his completely changed at that moment. I had always thought of him as a quiet man who was indifferent to everything, but in truth, he was just a clumsy person. At this point, I couldn't help but feel a bit exasperated. So, why did you sell the house? And why did you go through the trouble of buying it back? To be honest, I couldn't understand what he was trying to accomplish.
Well, I actually wanted to gift it to you, but knowing you, Hannah, I didn't think you'd accept it for free.
He explained that if something were to happen to him, he felt uneasy about leaving just money behind and wanted to ensure I'd have a home. Why me? You have Megan and Mom too.
Megan isn't the type to settle in one place. As for Grace, I just couldn't bring myself to give it to her. After what happened the other day, I realized how I truly feel. Someone who says such terrible things to you, Hannah, isn't someone I want to look after. That day, instead of protecting you, I panicked and said something awful like, "Leave the money and go." I'm really sorry.
It's okay now. So, why did you buy it back?
I knew the house was a painful memory for you. I wanted to get rid of it as quickly as possible.
Good grief, you're hopelessly clumsy. Seeing Dad slump his shoulders dejectedly, I actually found it kind of endearing. When I sighed and glanced to the side, Matt was smiling warmly at me. What?
It's funny how you two are so alike. Both a little clumsy in the same way. Definitely looks like parent and child.
I guess so. After that, I talked with Dad for hours, something I had never done before. Despite his clumsiness, he answered my questions in a slow and careful manner. As I listened, It felt like my younger self was finally being comforted. My dad and mom eventually finalized their divorce. Once mom realized dad was resolute, she tried to claim alimony, but since she had been the unfaithful one all along, he countersued for infidelity and won decisively. In reality, mom was the only one who had been unfaithful. On the contrary, he filed a claim against mom for her infidelity and won decisively. It was surprising to see dad, who once seemed infatuated with mom, show no mercy at all. Apparently, at some point, he came to value Megan and me more than mom. It seems he recognized mom as an enemy for hurting his precious daughters. Mom contacted me a few times, but eventually the messages stopped altogether. According to Megan, she probably found someone new. I thought the same. Later, dad sold the property to someone else. Now, that place has nothing to do with us anymore. I've blocked my mom's number, so I doubt I'll ever hear from her again. Instead, I now have my dad, Megan, and Matt in my life. For the first time, I feel like I understand what family truly means. My dad now lives alone in an apartment near us. Since he struggles with housework, I occasionally visit to teach him, and I can't help but find his shy smile amusing. Megan travels the world, but she always joins us for the holidays, hanging out with dad for drinks and swapping stories. The people around me aren't the only ones who have changed. My perspective has transformed as well. Thanks to my dad, I've finally started to feel like I might want to become a parent myself. It's something that can't be planned, so I'm not sure what will happen. But just sharing this desire with Matt made him so happy. Marriage is a wonderful thing. If I'm ever blessed with a child, I want to tell them, Mommy and Daddy are happy because they got married. That alone should be enough to make a child feel loved.